Hi everyone, just a quick note before we start. This episode is going to be mostly about art colleges, applying to art colleges, and all of our various opinions about art colleges based on what our experiences are. So probably not super useful for anyone who isn't in high school or isn't looking to apply to art school. So if you might find that kind of stuff boring, then you might want to skip this episode.
I just found like $20.
What?
I found a $20 bill in a Naruto envelope on my desk. Out of nowhere. All right, let's begin then. I'm Simone.
All right, I'm Sam, and hello and welcome to Negative Space, a podcast where art students talk about art. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
How's that $20 treating you?
I am so happy. I had no idea. I thought Naruto had nothing to offer, but apparently Naruto had $20 to offer. I love you, Andrew Jackson.
So today our topic is applying to art school. I don't know, this is a topic that I actually like talking about a lot because I spent such a long time studying different art colleges and like working on my portfolio and like doing the applications that and it's like something that you spend a super long time on, but then ultimately once you've finished applying is completely useless knowledge because you'll never use it again in your life.
Yeah, it's totally irrelevant now.
And I like collected all these view books and like this is kind of the information that we both have, and probably it's something that took a while to accumulate all this knowledge, so if we can just kind of put what we know in one place, hopefully it'll help somebody in the future.
There'll be at least one person that learns something new about art colleges through this.
One single person.
One single person.
So one important thing to note before we start, we're gonna try to not talk about the portfolio in this episode because the portfolio
will be something else. Yes.
That is gonna be the next episode because that's a whole other topic that has a lot of questions associated with it. So that can be its whole own episode. So we're going to try and steer away from portfolios this week. We're just going to talk about all of the specific schools, all of the colleges that we applied to, what our experiences were with them, what we know about them, either from experience or from just like hearsay. So
yeah, sure. The first thing that we're going to be talking about is admissions counselors. So they're basically like, when you say admissions counselors, you mean like the people that are from the schools that would talk to you about it, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's really important to note that both of us had we were pretty super lucky that we had an art teacher in high school who was really well connected with a lot of the admissions counselors from basically like every art school in the area, not just in the area but like across the country too. Like most of the reputable art schools knew our high school art teacher, and so he was able to talk to a lot of the admissions counselors and get them to stop at our school whenever they went out for like tours and stuff. And so we were really lucky to have a lot of admissions counselors come straight to our classroom or like have portfolio review nights at our school where they would like come and take a look at your stuff or give presentations about their school. So that's how a lot of my own experience about what different schools are like comes from, is because Mr. Chow like got all of these admissions counselors to come and talk to us about their schools.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't question it at the time because it just seemed like, that's all that I knew, so I was like, oh, this is kind of normal, right? But then I realized later on, that's kind of, like, pretty awesome that he got all these people to come to actually talk to us. Like, most art classes, I don't think would have, like, people coming and trying to, like, recruit kids for the colleges, because people don't really think of art that much, like, in that way.
I know. It's really pretty special. And, it's weird you never really think about it a lot when we were in high school, but our high school had a really strong art program, like for a school that's like, like super high tech STEM fields, like located in an area that's like all about technology and math and science, like we had a super strong art program. And I guess you only ever get to experience one or two high schools at most, so it's not like we had a lot of experience outside of this.
Yeah, well, if you're gonna do anything in Monte Vista, it has to be the best. You can't just do it halfway. It has to be all the way in.
First things first, applying to art college. So our experience is applying to art college straight out of high school. Obviously, the process is going to be pretty different if you already have a degree or if you want to transfer, like from a different college. But our experience is pretty much solely from applying to school right out of high school. When did you start, like, thinking about applying? Like, the actual application process, not just, like, in general, like, oh, I want to go to art college, but, like, when did you, like, really think about, all right, I gotta, like, work on my portfolio and my application and my essays and stuff?
Well, for me, it was, like, late sophomore year, right? Like, I probably should have started working earlier, but it wasn't until late sophomore year and, like, summer of that year where I really started, like, thinking about my portfolio and, like, working on it and thinking of specific colleges, right? So, you know, that's around that time. I spent a lot of time in the summer, particularly working on it. What about you?
No, that was the same for me. Like, the summer after sophomore year, before junior year, I was actually, like, super paranoid about this, and I wrote all of my college essays, like, the summer before junior year, because I like, collected all of the college essays from all the colleges that I wanted to apply to, and I wrote them all the summer before, because I was like, oh, not gonna have time for that once school starts. Not a bad idea, but it turned out to be a kind of a stressful summer.
You are unbelievable. I had no idea you did that.
You know, like 6 out of 10 would maybe recommend if you're a little bit crazy. For the actual application process, when is the best start? Okay, every school is different. There are some, like, general deadlines, especially when it comes to public schools like UCs, CSUs, and also, like, some schools that are on the Common App. So there are some general deadlines, but then there are also some schools that are very weird, that have deadlines that either don't have deadlines. It just is a, like, not first come first serve, but, you know, they'll keep taking applications until all slots are full in the program. And then there are some other schools that, like, just they have open enrollment and you can just apply whenever, and they don't ever stop taking applications.
Yeah.
But in general, when do UC applications open? Do you even remember?
I don't remember any of this. I'm past it now. I flushed it all out of my brain.
I think it's like September, near the middle of first semester of junior year. That is when, if you are applying to, let me try and remember, art schools, like private art schools that like run close to the public school system, like the calendar system. I think SVA, CalArts Otis, CCA, Micah, and RISD. I think those schools tend to stick closer to the state deadlines than some of the other schools, like Art Center, which Art Center
is really weird.
Art Center is the weirdest, like, just because of the term system. We'll get into that. There are also, okay, so let's make a distinction really quick. There are private art schools, some of them including Art Center, CalArts, SVA, Otis, etc. And then there are also schools, like universities, that have colleges of art, but are not solely dedicated to, like, the whole university is not an art university.
Yes.
So, for instance, where you're going, Fullerton.
Yeah, where I'm going right now, it's definitely not just an art college. Like, if you looked at it from the outside, I don't think you would suspect that anyone in there was studying or that for art, or that any of, like, the people that went to that school are, like, now working in, like, DreamWorks and stuff, you know? But surprisingly, like, there's a pretty big art program here, and it's a pretty big deal. it's just kind of hidden, you know? Even though it's pretty well known within the art kind of world, I guess, in the general area, it being in like Southern California and everything. But there's a lot of schools like that. So right now I currently attend Fullerton, but there's also places like San Jose State, right, which also has a pretty reputable art program.
San Jose State has a really, really well-known illustration and animation program. Their illustration animation program, as far as I know, almost on par or as good as maybe even better than some private art colleges. At least that's what I know from their reputation. Also, okay, so there's also, in the category of universities that have art programs but are not art colleges, there's a distinction. There's state schools, so those are UC, CSU, and then there's also private colleges or universities that have art programs but are not state schools.
Yes.
And I think the only one that I remember that does that is USC, I think, that has a Bachelor of Fine Arts program, but it is not a state school.
Yeah, there's not a lot of UCs that really, like, go that much into art. Like, there's UCLA, and that's, like, the one big one that's known for having some art program stuff. But other than that, it's pretty, like... I was thinking about applying, and then there wasn't really that many options, so...
Let me think. Oh, obviously, all of our experience in terms of like public schools is limited to California.
Yes.
But California has a very well-known public university system. So, did you apply to the UCs at all?
I applied to one UC. I just applied to UCLA, and I didn't get in because I didn't have the grades for it. Place is hard to get in,
Same.
Man. That's all that matters. And another interesting thing with applying to non-art specific schools to study for art is that usually they will not take a single look at your portfolio. It's all about your grades. Just like with most other applications, it's all about your grades. Usually they don't even take an essay. It's just, looking at purely statistics and deciding whether you get in or not. So if you prepared a portfolio for like 2.5 years like me, and then end up actually going to a public school in California, doesn't mean anything anymore. It's kind of, as sad as it is, it doesn't really hold any weight for when you're actually applying to those schools. So
yeah, this is really a big distinction, is that the schools that were universities that I applied to that had art programs but were not art colleges, that's including UCLA, UC Davis, San Jose State, USC, those schools that I applied to, they do not look at your portfolio until after you have been admitted to the school proper, to the university proper. So if you were applying to UCLA for like computer science, you would be regarded the same way as someone like that. And they would just look at your grades, they'd look at your application, your essay, what your extracurriculars were, all of that stuff that's in the normal college application essay. And only if you pass that do they look at your portfolio and decide whether or not to let you into the art program inside of that university. So that's how USC and UCLA do it, as far as I know. I did not get into either USC or UCLA. And I did get into UC Davis's design program, but I don't actually recall whether I had to submit a portfolio to UC Davis. I think they might have just let me in based on the grades. I don't really remember. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And then San Jose State, which they have a very good illustration animation program, like we mentioned before, they don't look at your portfolio at application. They don't even ask for a portfolio when you apply. So it's a USC, they use the USC, or it's not the USC, what am I talking about? The CSU application, and you just apply normally. And I actually am totally unclear about this, but do they just decide whether you get into the major based on your grades? Because you do have to declare a major when you apply, and if you get in not for that major, then you kind of can't get into the major. Like, I'm not super sure how it works. Because you had experience with this, right?
Yeah, well, here's how it works at my school. Basically, like, if you get in as an art major, it's just like a general art major, right? You don't have a specific, like, declared concentration yet. until your junior year or so. And that's when you like actually apply and like send in a portfolio to the office and like have them review your stuff and then let them decide whether you're gonna continue into your specific concentration or whether you have to choose a different department within the art department. So like for me, I'm just a general art major right now, even though I want to study either illustration or animation. I'm not sure which yet. I am just a general Bachelor of Arts major. I'm not applied for a BFA yet. I have to show my portfolio and try to get in specifically to the animation illustration majors.
But for San Jose State in particular too, do you know, because I know when I applied to San Jose State, when I got my acceptance letter, it said on the acceptance letter that I had been admitted to their School of Illustration and Animation.
Yeah, no, that one is a little bit different. For them, they just automatically accept you into the major, but I think that it's really rigorous and that a lot of people like tend to drop off and have to switch majors if they're not good enough or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's pretty intensive and kind
San
of
Jose
scary.
State pretty particular about that major, in like specifically that major. I think I mentioned this in the last podcast, but one of the things that's really good about like universities, public universities or private that have art programs but are not art schools is that if you are unsure about whether or not you 100% are interested in pursuing art as a career, you can go to one of these universities and you can study in their art or design department, but you don't have to tie yourself to it. So if you decide that, 1 or 2 years in that you want to change your major or you're not interested in art, this is not something you want to pursue professionally, you can stay in that school and choose something different to do.
Yeah, that is very true. And you're also not surrounded by other art students all the time. Right now,
which is an upside or a downside.
It depends on your viewpoint. So for somebody that is, in high school right now, and you're like, oh, there's no other artists around. Being around artists, fellow artists, is a very different atmosphere, and it's very, I guess it kind of brings the art world into perspective. Because when you're not around other artists much, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm the art person. But if you're surrounded by other artists, everybody is the art person. So there's other, factors of yourself that you have to kind of take into play. But if you're in a more public school that has other majors, it's, it's more like high school again, right? Where you're the art person within that community, I guess.
Okay, let's really quick go through what we know about specific majors. So UCLA, I know they have a very strong painting major. You can be a BFA in painting. You can get a BFA in painting at UCLA. I know they're pretty well known for that. None of the public schools or universities have specific illustration or animation programs except San Jose State, Fullerton, and Chico. Yeah. Is that right?
Right. I always forget that Chico exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
UC Davis does not have an illustration major. They have a design major. Not 100% sure what that entails. I think Esther went to UC Davis. Yeah, and then USC has a animation major, but that is in their film department, not in their art department, if I remember my application correctly.
That sounds familiar, so that might be USC.
That is... Anything else you want to add about, universities that are not art schools?
Not specifically. Actually, something that I noticed about Fullerton in particular is that they have a lot of different art majors, or different kind of subsections of art that you can major in. So, that's cool. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure about the others, but I was kind of surprised. Because, San Jose State, it feels like there's just, animation and then, maybe graphic design. I don't remember. It feels like San Jose State has 2 art major things that you can do very specifically. Mm-hmm. But Fullerton is, I don't know, they have a general art program outside of that, so.
And I think what you were talking about before about the environment you're in is really important to consider.
Yeah.
It is a huge difference between being kind of isolated in an art school where you really are only going to be around people who either are in your major, are in a major related to your major, or like run in circles or like that are similar to the kind of interests that you have, as opposed to if you go to somewhere else where you're going to get a much broader exposure to other like topics, classes, interests, that kind of thing. So that's one thing to consider if you're thinking about college. Let's move on to private art colleges.
So we should start with, I guess we'll just go down the list. Well, for one, there's SVA, right? So that one's based in New York. It's very focused on comics, cartoons, and like animation stuff.
Stands for School of Visual Arts.
It does stand for School of Visual Arts. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, Rebecca Sugar went there. I'm sure everyone who knows who Rebecca Sugar is yelling over that. But yeah, that's her school. It's this.
She's kind of their like big alumni. They're really she's in a lot of their promo videos and stuff. Yeah. And yeah, so that's a big thing for them. I know SVA was founded on. SVA is one of the only schools. I think one of two, or maybe the only one in the U.S. that has a specific major in cartooning.
Yes,
is that correct?
Yeah, that is. It's one of the very few.
So that's one of the big things. Also, because they're based in New York, there are a lot of big name artists that teach part-time at SVA. I know Donato Giancola teaches there part-time. That guy whose name I forgot, who did the new Mistborn covers. I know some.
That's all
some
on you.
Kind of. Yeah, there's SVA tends to attract artists who live in New York, so that's a plus side. One thing I do know about SVA though is that they don't have a campus. Like their school, like their classrooms and their all of their facilities are like integrated into the city.
Yeah, I have a couple friends who go there, and they're talking about like transportation all the time, and like, you know, just them like walking around or getting around through like, you know, transport, like the subway and stuff. It's crazy. Mm-hmm.
Also, does SVA have a housing program? I think they do, right?
I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah, they do. But it's, you know, it's not like it's integrated into a campus or anything because the campus doesn't exist. So
yeah, it's just kind of in New York City. That's one thing to think about when you're looking at colleges is whether like there's only one school that doesn't have a housing program, and that is Art Center.
Yep, it's the one that you go to.
Yeah, we'll talk about. Why don't we talk about Art Center at the end? Because obviously I've got things to say about Art Center. So yeah, that's one thing that you want to pay attention to when you're looking at schools. Okay, next on the list, Cal Arts. Like everybody knows about Cal Arts.
It's Disney incarnate.
It's
what it is. It is born from the loins of Disney.
Why is Cal Arts so goddamn famous?
It's a big deal because it's basically like, I guess the general story is Disney Company decided they wanted a school to directly funnel artists out of. So they were like, hey, we should just make it in LA and call it Cal Arts and make people pay tons of money for our incredible art program. And also, in the act of going to their incredible art program, basically get a guarantee into like a Disney job. So that's why Cal Arts is a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, like you said, like the Disney Company wanted a specific university to train animators just to become Disney animators. And so getting into the Cal Arts animation program is kind of, it's a big deal because a lot of huge name animators for Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, a lot of people come out of the Cal Arts animation program. A lot of the TV animation, that kind of the like kids like cartoon animation world, dominated by Cal Arts graduates right now.
Yep, Cal Arts students are very, very popular in the animation industry.
It is also really hard, very hard to get into the Cal Arts animation program.
Incredibly difficult.
They take like 15 students a year.
Yeah, I applied to a bunch of art colleges, and I got into most of them despite not going to any, and couldn't get into Cal Arts for pretty clear reasons.
I did not even apply to Cal Arts. I was like, I know it's not even worth it, right? I'm not interested in that, and I know I'm not going to get in. It's not worth, the application fee, and the also Cal Arts is unique because they are one of the only schools that request that you mail them a sketchbook.
A sketchbook, yeah.
That's their thing, So a lot of people running up to the Cal Arts deadline will be posting pictures of their Cal Arts sketchbook. Like, it's a single sketchbook that is devoted only to, like, them drawing stuff that they think Cal Arts is going to like to see in it.
Yeah. Kind of terrifying.
Yeah, Cal Arts is in Valencia?
It's in Southern California somewhere.
It's north of LA, it's like half an hour north of Pasadena.
Yeah.
It is isolated.
Well, you went there. You went there for a summer,
I did.
So you will know a little bit more about it than I will.
I can speak to my experience at Cal Arts only because I went there for California State Summer School for the Arts, which is hosted at Cal Arts. I think we should do a separate episode on summer programs. But so California State Summer School for the Arts is hosted at Cal Arts. They have an animation program for CISA, as it's called, but I did not go to their animation program. I went to the fine art painting program over the summer. It's just a month-long intensive, but you live at Cal Arts, and then they have Cal Arts students as TAs, and then they use all the Cal Arts facilities and stuff. It's pretty isolated, I gotta say. Cal Arts is like they have like one campus. They have a building, and then they have dorms, and then that's it. And then it's like 20 minutes walking distance to like the nearest Walmart or something. And there's like a Death Valley behind it. Not Death Valley. There's like this like
there's some sort of desert back there. It's just nothingness.
And then it's like forest in every other direction. I don't know. And I don't think they allow you to have a car the first year, so you're kind of just stuck there.
It's mildly terrifying. It's like a prison, an animation prison.
I know.
Yep.
But outside of the animation program, Cal Arts is one of the only art schools too that has not visual art programs. So they have a music program, a theater program, and they have programs like outside of visual arts that they teach at Cal Arts. Oh, they have a film program there. And it's important to note, too, that their animation program, not under their fine art department, or it's not under their art department, it's under the film department. So if you apply to Cal Arts for animation, you are going to be applying to their film school under animation, not to their art department. It's not under the art department. Yeah, that's something they do. But Cal Arts is like, they're really well known for their animation program, and then like everything else at Cal Arts is like just kind of weird. Like their fine art department, nothing like their animation department, like super, super fine arts, kind of performance art, and like really like, I don't
quirky.
Know. Weird. All of my TAs who were fine art majors from Cal Arts, they like did like crazy performance video art installation type things. So if that's what you're interested in, that's an interesting environment to be in. Okay, Otis.
All I know about Otis is that I have a shirt from it that I stole from the art classroom because nobody wanted it.
Nice.
That's the extent of my Otis knowledge. I do know that it's an art school, though, and I do know that it's pretty good.
Yeah, Otis was actually my second choice after Art Center. It was my first choice. I initially wasn't going to apply to Art Center because I thought I couldn't get in. I was just going to not try, and like I was just like set on going to Otis. But after I applied to Art Center. So Otis, located in Los Angeles, it's right next to the LAX airport, so it's on the west side of LA. Otis, I visited their campus once when I was still applying, and I was looking at all of the schools. I think one of the top complaints that people have about Otis is that it's small. So there's only one building. It's like a single 6 or 7 story building that has all of the facilities in it, all of the classrooms, all the offices and studios and stuff is one single building. unless you are a fashion major, in which case they have another building in downtown LA.
Yeah. Actually, I have a friend that goes there, and she's pretty happy with it. Like, she's almost done with her school there, so. She's an illustration major.
Yeah, Otis really well known for their fashion program, actually. That's their kind of claim to fame. They have like a huge thing that they do every year with Neiman Marcus, where they have fashion students show their work in Neiman Marcus stores in LA. Otis, you said you had a friend who's in the illustration program?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not entirely sure. She said she's changed her major a couple times, but she's a really good artist, and she's almost done, and she just seems to pretty much like it, and she's been there for a couple years, so.
Let's see. When I applied to Otis, I got in, but I did not apply to their illustration program, actually. I applied to their digital game art program.
Huh.
I think.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they don't have, their illustration program is a little bit more focused on print illustration. It incorporates more graphic design. So that's why I ended up applying to their game art program, which is more about, game art, obviously. When you're applying to art schools, to look at their lookbooks, look under the major that you're interested in, because some places, illustration is a really broad term, so if you're interested in illustration, a lot of places have different focuses when it comes to illustration, and you might want to look at what different schools tend to focus on more than others.
Yeah, and a lot of different schools have, a different general feel for the kind of art that their students put out, too. So if you, look through a bunch of books and, see something that you think, oh, my art would fit in there, or, the kind of stuff that I want to create would fit in there, then, it's a good idea to look through this sort of stuff that their students create and see if you'd fit in artistically.
Otis, their housing program, top-notch. I visited one of their so instead of having dorms, they have a deal with one of their apartment complexes near the school. So essentially you move into a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 other people, so it's 2 people per room. And they are pretty nice. Their housing is pretty nice, as opposed to CalArts. The Chenard, that's what CalArts used to be called. They still call their dorm rooms that, and they are real dorm rooms, cinder block wall dorm rooms.
Yeah.
Next on the list, Laguna.
Laguna is one that I'm more familiar with. So Laguna is a school in the Laguna area, obviously. And it's pretty small. Like Otis, it's pretty small. It doesn't have one building though. It has maybe 2 or 3. And it's right next to the beach. I don't know why I'm talking about the location so much. I guess as a location, it's really striking, you know? It's right next to the blue ocean, but it's in this reddish canyon, and it's really beautiful. Mm-hmm. But it is a very small campus. So I guess if you have a problem with a small campus, you might not want to go there. But it has a pretty good animation illustration program sort of stuff.
They're a school whose illustration and animation program are kind of industry focused too.
Yeah.
As opposed to some schools that take a more fine art approach to illustration and animation. Laguna, they're being located in Southern California. They are kind of focused on the more industry aspects of those majors. Also, Laguna, like you said, small school, but also one of the, if not the most affordable private art college out of everything that we have on the list right here. Yeah. They are, I think their tuition is actually about the same as a UC right now. Although that does not include housing for Laguna.
Yeah.
Their housing is usually housing for most places runs about $10,000 a year.
Actually, the Laguna housing is really weird. They kind of make it seem like a studio apartment where, you kind of, have your giant, art workspace in the room. But,
mm-hmm.
And from what I can remember, it's pretty expensive. But, it was very interesting. It's just this big building that all the students live in. And,
mm-hmm.
and I don't know. It's really close to the campus, though, so you don't have to worry much about transportation, because it's right there.
Oh, you know what? We should talk about CCA since we're sticking in California for now.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't you talk about CCA too, because you have some experience with CCA.
Yeah, CCA is an art college that has a campus in Oakland and a campus in San Francisco. So, I think the one in San Francisco is the one for architecture and stuff, and the one in Oakland is more like animation, illustration, game dev, all that stuff. I went there over the summer, the same year that Sam went to CalArts for the summer. It was pretty good. The dorms were kind of iffy. And I went to the game dev program, right? Because I'm pretty into video games and all that. And I'm pretty sure this was just because it was like a slightly more cheapy summer program. But the game dev program wasn't that great. I think the illustration program probably was a lot better. And the animation program, all that kind of... Illustration and animation can usually be lumped together within colleges. If you're going to go there, probably wouldn't suggest studying game dev, but from what I've heard, the illustration and animation program's pretty great. Also, I smashed an egg into a counter there.
That's my favorite story of all time involving you. Story for a different time, my friends. But, let's see, we do know a couple, actually quite a few people that are going to CCA. So I want to say 3 of the people that we know from high school went to CCA. Yeah, and also 2 other people, like you and 2 other people that we know went to the CCA summer program.
There are people that are going to Art Center now with you.
Yeah, so I don't know a lot about CCA. I did apply and I got in, but I wasn't that interested. We can briefly gloss over any other schools that are in California that I can think of. SFAI, they have an illustration program, but they are really kind of a fine art school. They're really focused on fine art. And beautiful campus, though. Do you remember? We went to SFAI one year for National Portfolio Day.
We did? Oh yeah, we did.
Uh-huh.
I totally forgot.
It's like a castle.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, really beautiful campus. Let's see, other California art schools that you can think of. Academy of Art also in San Francisco. I know nothing about Academy of Art.
Me neither. I forgot about it. It's just...
I didn't apply. All I remember is that they kept calling me to ask if I was applying, which I was not.
Yeah, I think the fact that it is so completely unmemorable probably stands to say something about it. So, at least for us, it was entirely unmemorable.
The only thing I remember about them is that they had the biggest lookbook out of any school that I looked at. Like, they had this huge, massive, it was like a good 3 or 4 pounds, and it had this super fancy see-through cover. I don't know.
SVA's was like that too. SVA had a pretty
SVA had
one.
the aluminum handle.
Yeah, it was bound in aluminum for some reason. I don't know why. It seems expensive, but I guess if you're an art college, you have money to burn.
Okay, so that's all of the schools that I can think of that are in California. Moving out of California, Ringling.
Ringling is a college in Florida.
That is right. They're in Sarasota, Florida. Very well known for their game art program. Other than that, I honestly don't know. I know they have a strong animation department, or is that SCAD?
I was going to mention that Ringling from what I've heard, has a pretty good animation program, and I guess that kind of goes with the whole game dev thing, because, if you're going to make a game, you kind of need animators as well. They were named after the circus, weren't they?
Yeah. They were the guy who made the circus, helped found the school.
It's weird.
That's what it is. Yeah, I know one person
Clown
who
school.
Is going to Ringling. Okay, and then SCAD, so that's SCAD, I'm not really sure.
Some people call it SCAD, some people... I mean, I think SCAD is a little bit too close to SCAT.
SCAD. I'm sure they try and discourage that. So that's that's Savannah College of Art and Design, so that's in Savannah, Georgia, so north of Ringling, also on the southeast area. SCAD. Let's go with SCAD.
Yeah.
Animation department is, I think, the most well-known, or the one that I know of at least. Other than that, not really sure. I didn't apply. Wasn't
Me neither.
interested in moving to Georgia. Okay. Moving up the East Coast, Pratt.
Where's that?
Also New York.
Really?
Yes.
I totally forgot about Pratt. I'm so sorry. Sorry, New York.
Yeah, Pratt, known for their animation department. Not sure about their illustration department. I'm not really clear. I didn't apply there. Let's do RISD second to last, because that's the one that everyone kind of knows. MICA is Maryland Institute College of the Arts. I think that's what MICA stands for.
Yeah, it's in Maryland somewhere. The M stands for Maryland.
Yes.
That's
the I think it's Institute. So
Probably.
They're in Baltimore. I would say MICA is one of the most well-known like art colleges under RISD. There's RISD that like everybody knows, and then there's like MICA. And
yeah, if we're talking
schools.
East Coast, that those two are the big ones. Other than, I think it's SVA, RISD, and MICA. All three of them are pretty well
MICA, I did apply, and I did get into MICA. They have a illustration program, but one thing to know about a lot of schools on the East Coast is that their illustration programs are focused on print illustration mostly, not on illustration for entertainment, like that most of what you would find on the West Coast. So RISD, MICA, New York schools, stuff like schools on the East Coast, they're closer to publishing industries. Like huge publishing houses are based on the East Coast, so that's kind of what their illustration programs are more geared towards. So if that's what you're interested in, maybe the East Coast is a good place to think about.
Yep.
Next on the list, Parsons.
I don't know this one either.
Parsons is also in New York.
All these New York schools.
I know. Parsons, they are most well known, I believe, for their fashion program. Any other art schools that you can think of that we should talk about?
Well, we're going to talk about RISD, right? We haven't done that
yet.
Oh,
that's right. Right. Thanks for reminding me. Okay. RISD, they like to call themselves the best art school in the country. It's like a title that can't be corroborated or like supported in any way, but it is kind of the most famous art school. So when I told people that I was applying to art school, people who had no idea about art would ask me, "Oh, are you applying to RISD?" Because that's kind of the only name that they know.
Yeah. Part of the reason why so many people that aren't involved in art know about it is probably because, not safe for work warning, their mascot is a human penis, right?
That's that's
why everyone talks about them so much.
RISD, like CalArts, also requires you to mail not a sketchbook, but 2 drawings that you have to create specifically for their application. So they have a very specific, specific guidelines. It's a specific size, and they're famous for their bike drawing. So you have to do a drawing of a bike, and then you have to mail it to them, along with one other drawing that the prompt changes every year, I think. So that's kind of, they're known for that. Fun fact, I applied to RISD even though I had already gotten into my top school, because I hated myself. That's just
for fun, quote unquote fun.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. In hindsight, it was a bad idea and I shouldn't have done it, but the experience, I guess. Yeah, RISD, known for their illustration program, also a print-focused illustration program like a lot of other East Coast schools, also prides themselves, kind of like Art Center, on being a very stressful school. That's like a part of the culture, I guess, of RISD, is that they're really strenuous and you have a lot of work all the time. And
yeah, I mean, that goes for a lot of art schools. That goes for your art school, too. Like, Art Center is being famous for being vigorous.
Yeah, so to segue into Art Center, There are a lot of things that are kind of unique about Art Center, like in relation to other schools when it comes to their application process. So I'll go over what I know about the Art Center application process. Number one, Art Center runs on a term system. So it's not like semesters or quarters. It's 3 terms in a year. So there's a spring, fall, and then they have summer. They don't have like a winter. So the fall term runs from what is normally kind of the start of the year, September, until December. Spring runs from January until April, and then there's a summer term in between those two. So their application deadline, there basically isn't an application deadline when it comes to Art Center. You apply, it's better to apply earlier. Okay, so this is speaking specifically for the illustration major, because there is a deadline for some other like majors that are really, really popular. So entertainment design, which they're really well known for here. And then their transportation design program, which is like the thing about Art Center that everyone knows, because Art Center is super famous for their transportation design program. They like to talk about it all the time, about how like the head of BMW's design is an Art Center grad and stuff like that. So yeah, for the illustration major specifically, they have rolling admissions, so you just apply. They don't have a time when they like will get back to you by. Like some like public schools, they have a date that they just send out all of their rejections or acceptances. Art Center, if you apply earlier, you'll hear back earlier. That's kind of how it is with Art Center, and they'll just keep accepting applications until all of the slots are full in the program for that term, or term starts. So that's how the application is with Art Center. Yeah, like you mentioned, Art Center really, really kind of has the culture of high stress. It's like a point of pride, I guess.
It's kind of like the high school that we went to.
Exactly. I mean, it's kind of funny because I was like super, super nervous about Art Center because I knew it had this reputation for being really kind of like a meat grinder, and it's really tough and there's a lot of homework all the time and stuff. But really, I think going to our high school prepared me pretty well for coming to Art Center. We went to a crazy high school that was super academic, lot of competition. Basically nothing has changed. So that's, yeah. Let's see. Art Center also unique because they don't have any housing. So every other school that we mentioned here has a housing program, as far as I know. Art Center does not. I think they're planning on building one in the next 10 years, but obviously I'll be long gone before that happens.
So if you're applying in the next 10 years, don't count on there being housing at Art Center.
Yeah. If you are 8 years old and you would like to come to Art Center, maybe you'll have a chance of having housing by the time you get here, but no promises. So yeah, if you are interested in coming to Art Center, you do have to find your own housing. Pasadena is an upscale city. Housing here is kind of expensive, but all in all, if you live with roommates, it evens out. It comes to about the same amount of money that you would be paying if you were living in a dorm at a college with a housing program. Another thing about Art Center, okay, I'm not going to say must, but it is a huge plus if you can drive, and if you have a car. Getting around here in Los Angeles, if you don't live close to the school, is very difficult. There's public transportation, but you don't want to, especially first term, you have to lug around a lot of supplies, drawing boards, newsprint pads, stuff like that. It's hard to get around if you can't drive. There is a shuttle, so if you really need to, then you can take Uber. I mean, I know people who take Uber every day, which is crazy to me.
I would never.
It's like
too much money. It's so expensive.
Art Center has 2 campuses, so there's one up on the hill. It's called the Hillside Campus. I know, really creative. And then they also have South Campus. Getting between those 2 campuses can be kind of difficult also if you don't have a car. So that's one thing to think about. Actually, you know what? I should ask I was going to ask Mr. Chow and see if there are any other Monte Vista students who are going to be coming to Art Center next year. Because I think when I went back over the winter, there were a couple people who were interested. Like 6. So we'll see. Maybe they'll be joining us here. Okay. And you've also written in the show notes here, mention Art Institute.
LOL. Yes.
LOL. Thanks for the LOL. That really makes it.
There's this college in California. I think it's in San Francisco, right?
No, all over the U.S.
All over the U.S.?
All over the U.S.
It's all over the U.S.?
They have like 20 campuses.
Never mind. They have 20 campuses all over the U.S., and they're basically a giant fraud.
I'm gonna fact check. Not the fraud, because they're definitely a fraud. I'm gonna check see how many.
Okay, yeah, no. They basically what they do is they just like they will take your portfolio and use it for themselves. Like they will take your art pieces that you've created in their classes and use it for themselves and use it to promote themselves. So you can no longer use it. And I know somebody that's in one of my classes right now who applied to Art Institute and got in and got a full ride, which I guess would have been fine, I guess, because he's not paying for it at all. But they just kind of stole his portfolio and never gave it back. So it's just theirs now. It belongs to them now. And there's like something weird in the contract where they're like, oh, we can use all of your art for whatever we want. So yeah, it's kind of weird.
It's a very fishy, what it is, I don't know if they're accredited. I'm not sure how that works, but they are a for-profit college. It's like this huge thing that has sprung up. If you've seen an ad for a college, it's a for-profit college. That's like DeVry University, University of Phoenix, these kinds of places.
Yeah.
They are for-profit colleges, and the Art Institute is one of the huge ones that kind of preys on people who would like to pursue art professionally but aren't super educated about like the art education system. So that is
it's like a trap.
Just
it's like a fly trap.
Just watch out for that.
Yeah, it smells sweet, and it's only when some people are already inside when they realize that they've been duped and they're gonna be devoured by the giant carnivorous plant that is Art Institute.
So we'll be seeing you next episode for our libel suit from the Art Institute. Hopefully not.
Yep.
Any other art colleges that you think we should mention? I know there's a couple in Canada, but going out of country is kind of difficult if you live in the US.
Yeah. There's one really famous for animation in like Toronto or something, and they were like, "Oh, we're even better than CalArts," but I have no idea what anything about that college is. I just know that it's expensive.
When you have to compare yourself to CalArts, all it really does is boost CalArts' reputation.
True. I mean,
okay. I've also written here in all caps tuition, because this is a huge deal. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last 20 years, 10 years, you will know that higher education in the United States of America is unbelievably expensive. Like, completely unfathomably expensive. Orders of magnitude more expensive than every other developed country in the world. And art school is no exception. So, typically, art school total, so that, like, tuition plus housing plus like board, usually about $50,000 a year. So that's $200,000 total for a 4 years program, Bachelor of Fine Arts usually, which is a whole lot of money. RISD, I think, if I'm not wrong, this year their tuition is $65,000 a year.
Usually the tuition just goes up and up and up. There's no...
Yeah, RISD especially high. Literally, it costs as much to go to RISD as it costs to go to Stanford, which is not so. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, most people who
that's just something to mention.
Yeah, most people who end up going to private art colleges either like got a huge amount of scholarships or are totally stacked, right? So
yeah, or they have to dig themselves out of debt for a long time after they graduate.
And despite getting into multiple reputable art schools, I decided to go to none because my parents were just like, no, it's too much money. So I'm going to my public school now.
I don't know. I don't think either of us are in a position to, like, say whether or not it's worth it to pay for our college, because, like, it's way too early to say, I think, at this point. But I know there are a lot of interesting articles and videos and people who are either graduates or not graduates of art school who kind of talk about their opinions of whether or not art school is worth it. I'll put some links to some interesting ones in the show notes if you guys are interested in taking a look at that. So yeah. Oh, you know what? I put in the show notes to go over what different schools look for in portfolios, but I think we'll do that next week because we're running pretty long. This is longer than I thought it was going to be. So we'll go over, suffice it to say that different schools look for different things in their portfolios. So you should check their application website. So their websites will have information on, some schools have very specific requirements, like Laguna has a very specific number of pieces that they want you to submit, and like 2 of these pieces have to be observational, 2 of these have to be narrative, etc. Some schools, oh, you know what, we didn't even mention School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Totally forgot about that.
SAIC?
SAIC. SAIC, very, very, very well-known school, but they are also a kind of a fine art school, and they don't have majors, which is one of the things that they like to pitch. They just have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and you kind of build your own major based on what you're interested in. Yep. So that's, if you're interested in that. They are, it's very super, open-ended, super basically. Old. Also, like, rich.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about scholarships this episode, or do you want to wait for next episode?
I think you can wait until the next one.
So we'll talk about scholarships in the next episode, especially how they relate to your portfolio and how your application portfolio can influence kind of what your scholarship decision is going to be and how scholarships works with schools. Okay, let's move on to the one cool thing. Simone, it's your week.
Yeah, it was my week a little bit earlier than I was anticipating for it to be, but it is my week to show my one cool thing. And my one cool thing is, it's video game related, so if you don't like video games, sorry. Sorry, this will not interest you. But it is basically, there's somebody out there that's making a game where you manage a fantasy RPG game in a retro OS style interface. So
do you have a link?
It looks like something out of, like Windows 98. Like, it looks like you're using the Windows 98 OS to play this game and, like, manage all these little things. And it's really interesting. Like, just, like, looking at it graphically, it's fun, you know? Like, it's not even out yet, and I just like watching it just because it's so odd and seeing all, like, the little, use the same sort of interface as that OS, but it's all, you know, like, defeating skeletons instead of sending an email.
Wait, so hang on, it's an RPG about the OS, or is it like...
It's not an RPG about the OS, it's an RPG... Hold on. It's an RPG in the... I sent you a link to it over Discord. It's an RPG in the sort of... Oh,
I see.
The visual format is in the form of a really old OS.
That's really interesting.
It's cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So like all of the windows, just to describe, I'll put a link in the show notes as well, but kind of all of the windows that you have to open are like the retro, like really old Windows bars and
98.
Like, and like the
XP
desktop
or 98
with the icons and that like the horrible like shadow bezel effect that they put on everything like before 2005.
Yes. Oh, it's so awesome. I love it. This is, like, exactly up my alley of the sort of things that I'm interested in, which just goes to show, if you listeners had no idea yet, I'm kind of a weird nerd. But,
is this out yet, or is he still developing it?
It is not out yet. It's being developed. I'm not sure if it's just this one guy that's working on it all by himself. I think it might be. But, yeah, it's just this guy working on it all on his own. He's just making this game. I think his first post about it was from 5 months ago. So,
oh, wow. That's really recent. Huh.
Yeah, it's still in production. I'm really looking forward to this for when it comes out, just because it's so weird. It's awesome.
Okie dokie. So that wraps up our show for today. If you have any questions, you can email us. We have an email address. It's negspacepodcast@gmail.com, because apparently someone has the Gmail address _podcast. That baffles me. Like, who had that very specific idea to start a podcast called Negative Space, took the Gmail address, and then didn't actually start a podcast? I don't know. So, yeah, if you have questions, you can email negspace@podcast@gmail.com. If you want to see the show notes, that's at samanthashay.com/negativespace. And then you can find us on Twitter and Tumblr. All those links will be in the description. And also, you can subscribe to us on iTunes now, because we are now in the iTunes store.
We have a thingy. We got verified.
We did. And you can check out our YouTube channel, which is just episodes of the podcast, but on YouTube.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's been wonderful, Simone. Thank you.
It has been a time. Thank you.
I will talk to you next week.
See ya.
Bye-bye.